ముందుగా ప్రియమైన విద్యార్థులకు మరియు వారి తల్లిదండ్రులకు నమస్కారం. నా పేరు కె వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్ చైర్మన్. నేను ఈ రోజు 10th క్లాస్ విద్యార్థులను దృష్టిలో పెట్టుకొని మాట్లాడడం జరుగుతుంది. అది ఏమిటనగా, మనందరికీ తెలుసు, గత 2 సంవత్సరాలుగా కరోనా కారణంగా విద్యార్థులు ఎటువంటి పరీక్షలు రాయకుండానే పై తరగతులు పంపడం జరుగుతుంది. ఫలితంగా ఐఐటి జేఈ మరియు నీట్ లాంటి జాతీయ స్థాయి పరీక్షలను సాధించడం కష్టతరం అవుతుంది. దీనిని అధిగమించడానికి మరియు 10వ తరగతి పరీక్షలో అత్యధిక మార్కులు సాధించడానికి నేను మీ ముందుకు కె వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్ ప్లాట్ఫామ్ ద్వారా అనుభవజ్ఞులైన అధ్యాపకులచే ఉచిత వీడియో క్లాసులు, హ్యాండ్ రిటన్ నోట్స్ మరియు గత ప్రశ్నపత్రాల సమాధానాల విశ్లేషణ ఇవ్వబడును. కాబట్టి నేను విద్యార్థులకు చెప్పదలుచుకున్నది ఏంటంటే, ఈ ఉచిత వీడియో క్లాసులను మరియు హ్యాండ్ రిటన్ నోట్స్లను క్లాస్ రూమ్లో కూర్చొని చదువుకున్నంత సీరియస్ చదువుకోవాలను. ఇంకొకటి ఏమిటనగా, ఈ యొక్క క్లాసులు విన్న వెంటనే అర్థం చేసుకొని ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయవలను. ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయడం అంటే కేవలం చదవడం కాదు, పేపర్ మీద రాయవలను. అలాగైతే గుర్తుండిపోతుంది. దీంతో పాటు మీ యొక్క నాలెడ్జ్ని పరీక్షించుకున్న కొరకు త్వరలో ప్రీ ఫైనల్ పరీక్షలు కూడా నిర్వహించబడు. ఈ యొక్క అవకాశాన్ని సద్వినియోగం చేసుకోవాలని 10th చదివే విద్యార్థులకు విజ్ఞప్తి చేస్తున్నాను.
Here, if you look at when Mrs. Jordan said that it was a fatal mistake referring to her grandfather's death, Mrs. Slater does not approve and both start quarreling on how grandfather should have been taken care of. So here, though they did not really care for the father, but still when it came for the caring of the other, they both start quarreling with each other as to how they are supposed to take care of the grandfather. Mrs. Slater tells her that the father had been very happy that morning. He had gone to pay his insurance. She further said that he must have gone to the Ringo bells after paying the insurance. So in this way, Mrs. Slater tells that father had gone out that morning and he had gone to pay his insurance, and after that he might have gone to Ringo bells after paying the insurance. So in this way, at every step of their talk, they only focus upon the possessions of the father and the payment of the insurance. Here, if you look at Mrs. Slater further told them that she went to offer him food to eat. Once he came back, Mrs. Slater said that I also went to offer food to father, and at that time what has happened? She then put the tray down on the bureau. She then corrected herself quickly and said on the chest of drawers. So sometimes whatever the mistake that we make, we undo it by correcting ourselves. Now when Mrs. Slater went, there was bureau there and she laid the food on the bureau. But now the bureau is not with them. So she brought it down to make her possession. So she corrects. First I put it on the bureau, she says, and then immediately she corrects and says, no, it is on the chest of drawers. So she corrects her own mistake. She undoes her mistake. And here, she asked if her sister would visit their father. So then, Mrs. Slater asks Elizabeth, will you visit first father or would you like to take tea? Then, she preferred to take tea rather than visiting father. Generally, as a customary, if a person is dead, we first go and visit the person, pay our homage, pay our tribute to the person, and then we come back, and then whatever are the formalities are there, we do it. Either we drink water or we drink tea or something else. But here, they really don't care for father, or rather they don't care for paying homage or tribute to the father. So thus they are much bothered about the tea rather than giving homage or paying homage to the father. And further, if you just look at now, Mrs. Slater and Mrs. Jordan discuss as to how to announce their father's death in the press. So they were discussing about how they are supposed to just give the announcement of the father's death in the press. Mrs. Jordan suggests reciting a poem but Mrs. Slater says it will be expensive. So then first Mrs. Jordan suggests that we will recite a poem and then give it that. Then Mrs. Slater or Amelia says that it would be expensive and we can't bear that much expense. And then they come to talk about dividing jewelry and other things. Now after that, so let us discuss about it later after resuming tea. First now let us look at all the jewelry and all the belongings. So rather than announcing the father's death, here these two are discussing about how to divide the property between them. Mrs. Jordan tells that father promised to give his gold watch to Jimmy. See here the unmentioned character is Jimmy in the lesson. So Mrs. Jordan immediately tells that father when he was alive, so he promised that he would give the gold watch to Jimmy. This amazes Mrs. Slater, so she questions how is it and so on. Here Ben seems more concerned about father's insurance money. Anyway, she says no, any insurance money is there. If the gold watch is there, let it go on, no matter. But his insurance money is there, let us divide between us. Mrs. Slater doubts that father must have visited Ringo Bells instead of the insurance office. Now, this Mrs. Slater also doubts that this father might have also visited Ringo Bells instead of having visited insurance office. At this, Ben calls father-in-law a drunken old beggar. First, in the first part of the lesson, Ben praises. So in this matters, father-in-law is really great because he pays regularly his insurance premium. Now, when he came to know that his father-in-law did not pay insurance money, you look at his reaction. He calls him as a drunken old beggar. So now he compares his own father-in-law to a beggar. So you look at the treatment when he has known that he did not pay the insurance premium. So when he knew that first that he has paid the insurance premium, he praises him very greatly. And now when he came to know that he did not pay the insurance amount, he immediately calls him drunken old beggar. Look at the treatment that he has given to his own father-in-law. Mrs. Slater is furious because she kept him for 3 years with her. Mrs. Jordan is even more furious and accuses him, saying she kept him for 5 years. His own daughters, Abel Meriwether's own daughters, started as to how many years they have kept. They did not really remember about father, how he has cared them. He did not keep one daughter for some years and another daughter for some other years, and he did not despise them or he did not desert them. He kept both the daughters, he cared for both the daughters, he brought them up, and everything the daughters have forgotten. And now they say, we have cared for 3 years for him and we have cared for 5 years. So here they started quarreling as to how they have taken care about the father, as how they have looked after the father, and they have forgotten about all that the father has taken care about them. Now they are only bothered about how they have taken care about father. And now if you look at further, what are the other things that they were taking place? Now Mrs. Slater asks to check if the insurance receipt is in the bureau. Now she asks if it is there in the bureau. Then both the sisters start fighting over the bureau, and then started asking when did you buy it and where did you buy it and all those things. Now after some time, Victoria informs everyone, and now when they were talking about this bureau and they wanted to check about the receipt for the insurance, Mrs. Slater asks her daughter Victoria, go upstairs to the first floor and get the key so that we can check it. And Victoria is very much afraid to go into her grandfather's room. But Mrs. Slater says grandpa is already dead and he does not do anything to you. And then Victoria goes to her grandpa's room and returns very fast, afraid. And then she informs that everyone, grandpa is getting up. And then these two started discussing about the child was very crazy, how can a dead man get up? But you know what has happened? Everyone's surprised because they thought he was dead. And what happened? Father Abel asks the reason for kid's arrival. So now, though they thought him to be dead, he just gets up, comes out, and then they were shocked. And that's the end of part 1, the dear departed part 1. Now we enter into dear departed part 2. And here in the dear departed part 2, what happens when they look at the father getting up, father coming out alive? And then generally when you look at a person dead, we think him to be dead. And if at all, if the person resumes, if at all, if the person gets up and comes, though he is not dead, we doubt whether is it the person or his soul. So here also the two daughters, they doubt that the person is Abel Merriweather or his soul. So at that particular juncture, they try to check him by poking the finger into his body to check that whether he was Abel Merriweather. Now, everyone is surprised because they thought him to be dead and now he is not dead. Father Abel asks the reason for his kid's arrival. So because most of the time they don't exactly come to his place and they don't come to visit him. But now he sees all the kids, Elizabeth and Mrs. Slater, in the same way. Now here, he is irritated because no one responds to this particular, when he asks, okay, that he was there, no one responds to his particular response. Mrs. Jordan asks if he is well, and now Mrs. Jordan and then Victoria, so they ask him, okay, oh grandpa, you are alive, okay, you are not dead, okay. So then Abel Merriweather, being deaf, he couldn't listen properly, he asks Victoria, who is dead? And then these two people, they cover and say, no, she is bothered about your head. And then, oh, it's good and so on, he answers to his granddaughter. And then Mrs. Jordan asks if he is well. Mrs. Jordan also asks him, how are you and so on. Then he answers yes. Abel sees Henry is wearing his slippers and is irritated by it. And now, soon after coming, he was searching for his slippers and he sees Henry, his son-in-law, wearing his slippers, and he gets angry as to why he was wearing. And if someone is there, they regret for that. But Mrs. Slater or Amelia simply tells a lie, saying that no, I only asked, okay, your son-in-law to wear it because they are new slippers, they won't be stretching, so I just asked him to wear. And on the other hand, Elizabeth and Ben Jordan, they think, what has happened to them because these people have worn the slippers. Okay, why they step into the slippers of the dead man so fast? So that's what they feel about. He asks them why they are wearing morning dress. Now, after that, once he wears the slippers, and then when they wanted to have tea, he looks at all the members of the family, and then he questions them why they were wearing the morning dress. Because as I already told you in the initial stages of the lesson, that people, they wear morning dress only if a person is dead. And Abel Merriweather looks at the members of the family that all were alive and why they were wearing morning dress.
Hello students, my name is R.K. Pandey. I have done my B.Tech from IIT Kanpur from electrical engineering. I teach chemistry in K. Venkana classes. I head the chemistry department. The main facility of K. Venkana classes is all the faculty are very rich in experience, and they have taught students who have secured single and double digits. They have got very good ranks in JEE and NEET. So if you are serious for your career and if you want to pursue your career in engineering or medical, you are surely welcome here. The facilities includes not only the top tier teachers, but the other facilities like doubt clearing sessions and other academic as well as personal treatment that is provided by this institute.
And here he asks them why they are wearing morning dress. Victoria is very happy that her grandfather is not dead, And grandpa again asks who's dead and why everyone is wearing mourning dress. And then when he looks at, he asks why these people were again wearing the mourning dress. And Mrs. Slater lies saying Ben's brother is dead. Now immediately Mrs. Slater says that this particular person's brother is dead. And immediately Abel Merriweather had so many questions to ask. Whose brother? And he asks, what's his name? And then where does he stay? So there were so many questions to ask, and these people, they really struggle to answer Abel Merriweather's questions. And here, if you look at this particular aspect, Mrs. Slater also offers him some pie to eat, and grandpa tells everyone he was tired and was sleeping since morning. Then his gaze falls upon the bureau and asks why it has been taken from his bedroom. Now when they start resuming tea, when they start drinking tea, immediately as they start taking tea, he looks at the bureau which was there very near. So he asks Amelia and Henry why they have brought down the bureau. And then he also looks at the clock when it strikes 6, and then both of his daughters starts arguing about that particular thing, and he is watching them at confusion. And here if you look at, Mrs. Jordan tells him that he was thought to be dead and accuses Mrs. Slater and Henry for stealing his things. And now Henry and then Mrs. Slater or Amelia, they stole all the things and brought them down to make them there. And then here, this gave them a chance or opportunity to Elizabeth and Ben Jordan. They start accusing these two people, Amelia and Henry, saying that they have stolen all the things. And then at this particular juncture, Abel Merriweather understood all the situation. He understood that these two people, they thought him to be dead, and then they started stealing away all his things. Now here, he understood that his possessions were being divided. He understood that these two people started dividing the things between them, thinking that he was dead. Henry asks him about his will. It tells them that the will is in the bureau. Mrs. Slater requests him not to be hard on her. And now, when father was very harsh, father got angry, Mrs. Slater asks him pardon. He asks, sorry father, and I might have not done like that. And in the same way, Mrs. Jordan also asks pardon, Elizabeth also asks pardon of her father. And then grandpa tells that he shall make a new will, leaving all his things to whomsoever will take care of him until his death. When he knew that these two people did not really care for him, so he understood one particular thing, and then he announces that whomsoever cares for me, whomsoever looks after me, I will give my property to them. At that juncture, they start quarreling about keeping their father with them, and then they start working about that particular aspect. And then they start quarreling, saying that father, you have stayed only 3 years with me, so you stay with me. And then immediately Elizabeth says that though father had stayed with me for 5 years, I think after looking at stealing all the things of the father, it doesn't stay with you. So in that way they start arguing about the father's belongings. Now both the sisters want to stay their father with them. They start arguing as to what they have done to their father. But Mrs. Slater says that Mrs. Jordan had enough time with the father. Mrs. Slater tells to Mrs. Jordan that father had already stayed with you for 5 years, and he has to stay 5 years with me, and he had stayed only for 2 years, only for 3 years. And then Mrs. Jordan tells to Mrs. Slater that after doing the stealing and all unnecessary things, I don't think so the father will stay with you. So as they started arguing and discussing over this particular aspect, what has happened? Father understood that my daughters are not really interested in taking care about me. My daughters do not want my presence with them. My daughters want only my possession, my things, my property to them. So, though these people, they were arguing for this, father had some other plans to himself. He already understood, and he might have already planned his own things. You see, grandfather Abel tells that they have mistreated him in the past, and they should not be very proud of it. At this particular juncture, Abel Merriweather tells to his daughters that you have already mistreated me, and you did not really take care of me, and now you want only my possession. So in this particular aspect, nothing to be proud of or nothing to be worried about. Both have equally mistreated me. Both have equally did a lot of wrong things to me. That's what he felt about. Ben suggests to him that he should live with one of his daughters. Now, whatever they have done before, whatever they have requested, now Ben starts demanding Abel Merriweather, and he calls his own father-in-law Mr. Abel Merriweather. It does not even respect his own father-in-law. It does not call him with respect. It simply demands, hello, Mr. Abel Merriweather, you have to stay with any one of your daughters. You can't go and whatever you want, you cannot do it. That's what Mr. Ben demands of Abel Merriweather. But father Abel Merriweather had his own plans. So what were his plans? Now let us look at. It tells them that on next Monday he is going to do 3 things. And what are those 3 things? He tells to his children. First thing is to go to the lawyer and change his will. He had done some other will to his children, and he wanted to give the property to his own children, to Elizabeth and Amelia. And now he is going to change the will, whatever he had done, and he wanted to alter the will, whatever he had already made. Second is to pay the insurance premium. They thought that he had paid the insurance premium, but he didn't, and he is about to pay the insurance premium. And the third is to marry Mrs. John Sherrox, the owner of Ringo Bells. And the twist and the turn of this particular play is this. He is at the age of 70 plus. He is going to marry John Sherrox, who was keeping Ringo Bells. Ringo Bells is a restaurant, and he is about to marry John Sherrox because he thought that his daughters would take care of him in his old age, and he wanted a kind of accompaniment to himself. He thought that his daughters would really share his feelings, but he did not feel that his own children cared for him. So he found a partner, or he wanted to find a person to share his own feelings, and then he thanks Mrs. Slater for bringing the bureau downstairs. He says, anyway, it is handier for me, it is easier for me to take all the bureau and everything. If I might have to carry all the things, it would be problematic for me. And now you have done a great thing doing this particular bringing down of the bureau. And then he also tells that it would be easy to carry it from them. And then it is a satire that whatever they have done, it is a kind of great thing that he had done. So here, if you look into present day's world, the world is in this way. People are more bothered about the property and material needs of the elders, and in their old age, they are failing to take care of their parents. Dear students, I would like to advise you to take care of your parents. If your parents are not there, you aren't there. So in your future, to whatever heights you reach, do not forget your parents and to take care of your parents. Please take care, and then please take care of your parents. Thank you.
వేణుగారు, ఎక్కడికి ప్రయాణం?
తిరుపతికి సార్. మా అమ్మాయికి హైదరాబాద్ లోనే మంచి బ్రాండ్ ఉన్న కాలేజీలో సీట్ రావాలని మొక్కుకోవడానికి వెళ్తున్నాం.
తిరుపతికి వెళ్తున్నారా? మరి వైజాగ్ టికెట్ బుక్ చేశారా?
తిరుపతికి వెళ్తుంటే వైజాగ్ టికెట్ బుక్ చేయటమేంటి సార్?
మరి ఐఐటి నీట్ లో అద్భుతమైన కోచింగ్ ఇచ్చే కాలేజ్ మీ దగ్గరే ఉండగా బ్రాండ్ ఉన్న కాలేజ్కి వెళ్తానంటారేంటి?
ఏ కాలేజీ సార్?
వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్.